Eating, dancing, getting down, spending we Christmas in Guyana. Spending we Christmas in Guyana. Spending we Christmas in Guyana. Ho, ho, ho. There's nothing like me home on Christmas morning, liming with me friends and family, greeting everyone around, eating, dancing, getting down, spending we Christmas in Guyana. Watching all the little children running up and down, playing excitedly with their toys, making sure we get we share of curry, goat and rum, chocolate cards and dominoes with the boys. Yes, man. There's nothing like me home on Christmas morning. Everybody there soca dancing. Masquerade band coming down. Mother Sally prancing round. Spending we Christmas in Guyana. Merry Christmas!
Yes indeed, yes indeed. It's Christmas time. And in spite of the trauma, in spite of the what I consider to be debilitating circumstances of the country, and indeed our individual and collective family notwithstanding conditions, as human beings we must find opportunities to smile in spite of the adversity that one is experiencing. It is in that context we must understand the sincerity of the present administration, but more importantly, the challenges that was bequeathed to them by the previous administration, most of which or many of which were unnecessary, and the subject or is the result of what maladministration and the level of incompetence and the level of intellectual and cognitive, what I consider to be retrogression, is phenomenal when you hear them speak. And of course, the former Prime Minister not being able to get 10 people in a meeting. What does that tell you? It tells you that we must be grateful and we must have hope. We must have anticipations that this too will come to pass. The issues of not having a job or the potential for not being able to put food on the table or not put it in a manner, fashion that you would have been accustomed to prior to the advent of the Rowley PNM Short-Young ephemeral administration. But it's Christmas. And yes, I understand that the genuine concern of those who would have been able legitimately and sincerely to put food on their tables, consequential of CPEP, URP, the forestry program, but unfortunately would have been closed for very valid reasons. But at the same time, there must be, of course, opportunities that could be confined to what is called alternatives. And the quicker the government gets into the alternative mood in an aggressive way, because I can tell you I am a realist and a pragmatist, as I've always said, but certainly no one could feel comforted or comfortable with the plethora and the exponential increase in petty criminal behavior all over the place. Today, the place was almost a light and a washer with the police officers running behind, trailing and tracing, usually the young, agile, in their formative years, engaging, of course, in activities that could only be considered a part of the subterranean culture, which, of course, is crime, criminality, gang warfare, and so on. But these days, I want to say that I am satisfied that many of it is just a matter of putting food on the table, being able to eat. I say so because I myself is a microcosm of that which is required to respond to such development. So normally, 2, 3, 4, maybe a week, maybe about a dozen of them will come, and I'll be able to say, hold $100, hold $200, hold $300. Don't go and lock anybody's neck, etc., etc. Because they don't have a job. And in many instances, they may have, of course, matters before the court as well. And here it is. You are placed in that scenario. Many say, well, Smith, what you're doing that for? There's no need for you to do that. If they go and get themselves in problems, that's a matter for them and the police. But the issue for me is this, that if today, tomorrow, next week, I am able by that $100 or that $200 or that $300, and usually it's not just to eat it, it's to buy Pampers, it's to placate a very expectant mother who would have bored the child or children of the person who is coming to ask for that $100 to help buy the Pampers. Yes, I have gotten many of that and still continue so to do. The problem here is, what do we do? Leave them to their own devices? Or if you can make an intervention in spite of your circumstance, because I have to beg as well, apart from my own personal income that I have to share with them. And I want to say categorically, there are none. Let me repeat. I say category that there is none in Trinidad, Tobago, that is prepared to reach the stage where I don't need to spend 24/7 in this community. I don't have to. I can do much better outside and live a very comfortable life. But remember, I grew up in this community, Parsley Street, Smith Lane and Parsley Street. So I understand. I've also seen colleagues of mine, one of which end up in the United Nations, and of course in one of the major financial multilateral institutions of the world, the World Bank or somewhere there. Sergeant, yes, as you are talking to, just in case, or about just in case, because we had a plan that we will not abandon. I in teaching, he in, of course, at UE, graduating as an economist. But whilst we were doing that, we were engaged, of course, in what I consider to be capacity building, meaning that bringing those who believe that somehow they were not born to achieve and to have their eyes on excellence, an excellence that the society recognizes, not crime and murders and, of course, gang warfare and the creation of artificial borderlines. No. The more we get out of that quagmire, the more we get out of that constraint, it's greater for the community and for the society at large. Because I remember very distinctly when I brought, that was about 2000, that was 1986, about when the Robinson administration was in office, the NAR having defeated the PNM 333, and I launched what we now know as MLIO, Mobile Laventille Improvement Organization, and the Prime Minister and ministers of government at the time, including ambassadors and high commissioners, we invite them to come up to Laventille at the top of Parsley Street, where the view is scenic and panoramic. You could see the Labas, yes, from on top there, but you could also see parts of the plains of Caroni, and on a clear day, you could see the burning of gas as far as not Point Fortin, but as far as Pointe-a-Pierre, yes, Pointe-a-Pierre, from the hills of Laventille. But I remember up to this day what Robinson said, the late great Robinson, because I say so because he's the only man that was able, of course, to be Prime Minister and be President of this country during his lifetime. And I remember when, of course, when it was his turn to give the feature address at the opening of our trade school, and he watched around, and then he looked to his right and he looked to his left, and of course he couldn't help but see the panoramic and beautiful view from Laventille of certain parts of the country, as I've mentioned earlier. And then he turned and say, Mr. Smith, you ain't only bring the whole cabinet to Laventille. Let me repeat. A.N.R. Robinson, then Prime Minister, the late, said to me, and all, of course, the other, what I consider be very hard-working, some have gone to the great beyond, others are still here. I am still here, for example, to give testimony to that fact. And he said, Mr. Smith, you ain't only bring me cabinet in Laventille, but like you bring the whole world. And I thought that was profound, and I believe that you too will see it in the context in which it was said. What he meant was that sitting next to each other, in the back of him, whilst he was at the podium, facing, of course, the audience, and at the same time looking at the panoramic view on top of a hill in Laventille called Prudham Lane, off Parsley Street. He was referring to the fact that not only members of his cabinet were in the audience, but also Canadian ambassador, Canadian High Commissioner, British High Commissioner. The Americans, I am yet, of course, to have them come up. In fact, when we were about to have the Americans come up, the government changed. Yeah, Biden went out, I believe it was Obama, because remember we had this black ambassador. Well, he had promised to come just before, of course, Obama demitted office. But the point I am making is, so we had that, we had the Germans as well. Yeah. Right in Laventille, that same place that people decry and stigmatize. Because I'm saying this tonight to make you understand that, in particular, Laventillians, thus, of course, we created the cliche called Laventil for Laventillians. And up to today, somebody is saying that Lennox Smith Day. And then they said Laventil for Laventillians because it resonated with them. And still do. I'm going to tell you something later down in the program that you would further appreciate the essence of what I'm saying. But yes, he did say that I bring the whole world. And of course, that was reflected by the representation of the various emissaries that would have been representing different countries of the world that have their embassies and or high commissions here in Trinidad. And here it is, they took time to, of course, come up to Laventil in order to witness a revolution that was taking place in, of course, its nascent stage, its embryonic stage, its beginning stage. And while, of course, the road has been meandering, twisting and turning, and while there were troughs and there were what I consider to be ridges, and while there were ebbs and flows, the fact of the matter is that focus, since then, never wavered or shifted. Thus today, I am able, of course, to stand before you and the world and the region and the entire Trinidad and Tobago and say, as constant as the northern star and as immutable as I said, it can't change. We remain steadfast to that fundamental, original philosophy that transformation can take place in that place. And I mentioned at that time, and I am regurgitating it tonight, that it is we who gave the country its national culture, steel, pan, and calypso, and carnival. And therefore, our creativity and inventiveness is such that we can, if we can do that. Today, of course, the pan is recognized formally as the national instrument, and of course, it is all over the place, including, of course, under the national emblem of this country. It doesn't matter who put it there. The fact is that the pan recognized and is known to have been originated from Laventil. And why Laventillians must believe psychologically, because that is what it is a mental state, that they are no damn good, that nothing good is expected to evolve from this place. So forget Latapi, forget Clinton Bernard, who of course eventually became a Chief Justice in this country, living right on Duncan Street, not too far from here. Forget Theodore Guerra and others who would have been associated with the general socio-economic, and I want to dare say the geographic proximity of the various communities from which they emerge. And yet still, today, what we have seen is a disproportionate not just allocation, but also an attitude by the rest of the country, including certain institutions, including the police, that would have categorized the area as what? As a crime hotspot. I'm saying all this to say that it is Laventillians on whom the transformation, on whom the amelioration, on whom the improvement, on whom the emergence of this morass, this decadence, and this tragedy that has evolved to today to be Laventil and environs. Whether you want to say Beetham, Sealats, Belmont, East Port of Spain, Chumacac, Mova, Malik, that is the socio-economic and well, let me put it this way. The socio-geographic spread I am referring to. The socio-geographic spread I am referring to. And the time has come that we must, because today I had a conversation with an ordinary person, conscious of the situation and having their own ideas as to what should happen. So having this conversation, and of course, it morphed into a discourse looking at transformation, looking at the evolution and the parameters and the imperative for making the area sociologically one that is not just productive and contributory, but one that does not include as part of its ethos or its developmental projection and forecast crime, criminality, gang warfare, borderline issues, but one of saying that we must become first class and not second class or third class citizens. And therefore we must make and continue to make our contribution. How does that happen, or how can it happen? But I want to tell you that when we looked many decades ago, I started with, of course, in 1986. But way back, because that couldn't bring in these players, these stakeholders together in Laventille, ambassadors, prime minister, cabinet ministers. It was not by accident, nor was it as a consequence of some kind of what I consider to be Vike, lack of planning, irrationality. No. Because we started in earnest in 1984. So 2 years before the NIO came into office. Yeah. And it came as a consequence of young people telling us, at the time I was teaching, of course, in the formal system, and of course, as I said, people like Sergeant was entering university, and we were having a certain amount of intellectual, or should I say, practical, pragmatic, and very elastic academic considerations that will provide some possibilities of transformation. The possibilities of transformation, people. That's what we were engaged in. I am sure that, of course, there's another sergeant, which, of course, is his brother, who is now, I believe, still in the police service, and he will recall being probably one of the first beneficiaries of that physical and intellectual and community-oriented interplay in order to generate the capacity building that I spoke of earlier. Because both the fellow who is now, of course, has turned his back. Yeah, Sergeant, you turn your back on Laventille. After we agreed that we will not do so, we'll come back no matter what. But he turned his back. I remember some time ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, when I hailed him out, and he said, "What's your name again?" And then I realized that he has reached. You see, because just like Marcel, they acclimatize to their new circumstance with their new friends and their new companions and their new status in life. And so that has become part of the normative interactions And so they forget the pledge that they would have made. They forget where they came from. Not Lennox Smith. I'm here tonight, right on George Street. Right on George Street. Sergeant, if you are in the United Nations or you, whatever part of the globe you are, I'm still here. Manifesting and living that which we discussed. Because we understood that we had to take the lead. Because you cannot expect persons who are unprepared or who have not been able, of course, to provide the fundamentals of leadership to take charge. Because what you will have is chaos, mayhem, and persons who are least able to lead find themselves in leadership position, thus contributing, of course, to the morass, the quagmire, and, of course, the crime and criminality and the level of retrogression that we are seeing on a daily basis. This is serious talk, you know. This is deep talk. I'm giving you the background so you'll understand. And at the same time, giving you an insight, an introspective perspective. Yeah. Let's talk some big talk here. An introspective perspective as to who Lennox Smith is. I know that that will be uppermost in some people's minds. And over the years, they felt that this thing, as far as Smith is concerned, because I would have had discussion with every and anybody of significance connected to or not connected to Laventille. And I remember Hines. And Hines was of the view that somehow Lennox Smith was utilizing the community in order to get rich. And I laughed then, as I'm laughing now. But let's go straight to the lines. Let's go straight to the lines. A pleasant good night to welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Lennox.
Good night, my dear. Just a mix. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I saw it. Yes, just before I came in, I saw it. Yeah, and well done. They give a graphic description as to what transpired. Last week it was just down the road, and this week is just further up the road, and etc. etc. Going in a rigmarole. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's not too short to the public, it's just for your viewing.
All right. Yes, no problem.
Yes.
And I will take a look at it and make the necessary calls.
Yeah, because it's real madness.
Yeah.
Good program so far, but CNN don't know how powerful the ground report and the Williams and Michael Clark that we reached today, almost the whole country was in yellow. You
Yes.
know about that?
Yeah. But more importantly, we have to remind those very people who are now the beneficiaries of that effort to let them know that it's we who would the mainstay. And I've always said, and we discussed it, Andy, Mikey, and myself, and of course I would normally put those propositions to the team, that if we were Indians, if we were not Africans, Rowley and they would have made mincemeat of us. Not one Indian commentator against the PNM was able to survive, as we have been able so to do. And I want to say, on the other hand, the UNC understood that, and I think they still understand that. But of course, in terms of measure for measure, in terms of compensation, and while, of course, we are doing it because of national service and national commitment, we have to eat and we have families as well. I say no more.
Yeah. I said another clip over this guy in Africa, what he is doing for his people.
Yeah,
Never step in his shoes.
Yeah, in this
You know, like that.
that African country where Bukhara, Safo, Sablel. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes, I certainly will.
Good religious show.
Yeah, I have a whole set. I have a whole set. In due course, I will be, of course, sharing it with especially the people of Laventille and so on, to show them what is possible when you have dedicated. Yeah. Yes.
And the video with Haiti, let the country see what crime is about, how bad it is, and how
Yeah.
bad it can get,
That's right.
and how drugs can do and abuse the environment, that people not choosing a good life, they're choosing a bad, a good gangsters region. So there's plenty to do.
Yes, man.
And
Plenty to do.
educate, and plenty to educate the people, and hope we stay in a power again for the next 15 years, that we could educate the nation with teacher like you. Bye, Lennox. Great program.
Thank you very much, of course, but I prefer the UNC and the Coalition of Issues stay in office in perpetuity. So there is no limit. It is limitless. And as my son would say, they must be in office like a recurring decimal. Like a recurring decimal. But that being as I think one of the operating words that the caller mentioned is the whole question of choice. That is an important thing. And I'm talking here directly to, of course, the Laverton people, because the choices you make is critical, whether it's to make children, whether it's to create a family, whether it's to get a job, whether it's to develop yourself by virtue of what is standard and what is normal and what I consider to be the mean understanding of what is required of a citizen of this country, and they themselves must understand what contribution they must make, but certainly in terms of their own development, well, food, shelter, clothing, and that speaks for itself. Because it means, therefore, you would want to have a place to live. You'd have to have, of course, clothing, and you have to eat food, shelter, clothing. And all of those means that there must be some economic activity connected to all of them. To do what? Ultimately, to make life better in the environment that you would have been associated with, both physical and sociological. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night and welcome to the corridor.
Well, good night, Dr.
Good night, my friend.
Sorry I couldn't call you last night.
Yeah.
You were showing my good friend.
Yeah. I had to mutilate him on screen.
Yeah, but let me tell you something.
Uh,
There's a man by the name of Dr. William Kudrasi.
yes. I heard of him today.
This man, I don't know if this man has covered or what, but I haven't heard something for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Since he was in power. This man came out and put out something where Kamala should step aside. He's siding with the imperialists, which is America. Can you believe that?
Yeah, the imperialists. Yes.
Yeah. After 10 years, this man come out to talk this cheap nonsense.
But I want to tell you that is a narrative straight from the playbook of Maduro. Because remember, Maduro is talking about the imperialist agenda and they want to get the oil. No one of them is talking about the oppression and the retrogression of his policies and programs that has, of course, created all kinds of difficulties for his people. So much so that over 8 million of them have migrated out. Put that in all the pipeline. And unless they can address that issue and the causation and the genesis, I have no time with them, whether it's Kubral Singh, whether he was a professor, whatever it is. I think it was a waste of a degree and maybe a mind as well that could have been put to better use. But go ahead.
Yeah, but you know, when he was on this hunger strike,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That was well orchestrated by the PNL.
Yeah, I visited him, had cause to, on one of the pushback movement initiative, and I had cause to happen to be where he was, and I heard him, and I was never impressed because by the days that he would have spent not eating, I expected that he would have been so emaciated, so starved of food that he ought to have died. but did not. It meant that he was cheating. He was eating somewhere. So I have no time with these fellas of them. Like Rowley, like of course Hines and and Imsworth, and they who, of course, are engaged in theatrics to attract some kind of media sensationalism that has no basis in the overall advancement of the country. But go ahead.
Yeah, but you know, he married, he just buying also a doctor. He married interracial also, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. He's like, I have mixed African or something else.
All right.
I think she was a member of the CNN Women League also, you know.
Well, are you surprised? I mean, there's no surprise with Rowley, and it's always an orchestration. And after you finish, I'll tell you the greatest orchestration that most people may not have observed, and may have missed them, that we need to bring to the fore. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the Prime Minister openly to the hospital.
Yes, rededicated, yes.
Right, so I am of the own view that hospital should be named after her.
Yes, well, I see that you are pledging and you are advocating, and you're looking. I'm sure pretty soon you will have an online and offline petition in that regard. But go ahead, the smallest idea begins in a small box called the brain. So go ahead, or the biggest idea, I should say. That's right. Yeah. The longest journey begins with a single step. Yes.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate her again. I was watching Tobago issue there, where 300 nurses were made permanent.
Yeah, apart from doctors, of course, getting opportunities to go to Guyana, as well. So things are happening. Yeah.
Yeah, so this woman is looking very, I don't know why. That page she went there and the PNM is saying that this woman she lost her soul, she can't think, she dropped. But this woman is a missionary, and I want to send you a podcast with Professor Selwyn Kojo, Dr. Kirk Nihu.
Okay.
The other podcast last night on Uncle Professor Walsh's program.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The Ali guy who is the journalist, what's his name again? But a very interesting podcast.
Okay.
I will send it to you.
I'll take a look at it.
And it's very interesting, Dr. Lennox. Very interesting.
Thank you very much. I'll take a look at it.
It's an eye opener. So I'll try to send it to you.
Yeah.
So I'll cut short because I want to take a rest. I'm feeling so hot today.
No problem. Joshua isn't feeling well as well.
Yeah, so I'll send it to you.
Okay then. Thanks very much. Before I go to, of course, what I consider to be the greatest deception perpetrated on the people by Rowley and Day. I want to say something, of course, connected or triggered by what the caller just said. But let's go straight to Faizabad. Pleasant good night. We lost that one. Let me just make sure that we have not been disconnected. In fact, we have been. Let me just make certain that we have re-engaged. All right, Mr. Faizabad, call back. And thank you very much, of course, for that splendid contribution that you have pledged towards, of course, our Christmas hamper drive. Notice this year we are not talking toys, we're talking about hampers, because we believe and I noticed something that, sometimes you don't want to claim that you are the repository of all ideas and initiatives. And you also have to accept that some people may have similar ideas because they have similar concerns. Even though they may be acting in a silo, may be different from each other, different places and so on, there's no way they communicate, but just they have the same idea. Well, I want to say that when I heard that the government is committed to, through, of course, Padarat, the Minister of Public Utilities, and of course, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister as well, and he said that, the government is not focused, is engaged in cost cutting, and they will not have the frolic that they would normally have, and not have all of these parties and so on that you would normally associate with Christmas. However, they are prepared, of course, to provide food, meals, I believe, and other things of that nature. And then I said, but listen, they are thinking just as us here on the ground report, on the corridor transformation, and indeed, of course, in my own organization, MLIU, as well as, of course, that of the Shouter Baptist Learning Institute. A number of us that have amalgamated under one roof. But let's go straight to Mr. Faizabad. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor, and I want to thank you, of course, in advance for that pledge that you made earlier this evening.
A pleasant good night to you, Uncle Lennox, and to all your listeners on the live. Please share. And if you want to share it on two hands, it will reach up to 40,000 very fast. Because if you do 5,000 on one hand, and you do the next hand 5,000, that will be 10,000.
Yes, man.
So we can only ask in the name of Jesus. But Uncle Lennox, when you're talking like I give you something good, but take your shock, and then mosquito fall in your pocket. But anyway, it's left to be seen. But
no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how deep the pocket may be, but every single drop contributes to what? To the filling of the bucket over time. All right. So I want to make sure that. So I will not be surprised or in any way disappointed, but appreciative of whatever. So I want to make that clear to you. But go ahead, my friend.
So that is why from the first day I get to meet you on the air and talk to you in Faizabad, since then to now, you show that you are an individual human, just like how humble, kind, polite, and managed when the time comes.
Yes,
so
indeed.
that is good.
Appropriate. Very appropriate, my friend. But go ahead.
Yeah. So tonight, I want to ask the listeners to have a little discourse with you. Because there is a nice issue tonight about the Lavantillians, the people of them in the area. And then it have a negotiation settled by the public servant. And you heard it bandina about because the PNM, Penny and them provoking them now to take cash, and look for cash. So I want to ask you something, Uncle Lennox, right? Now you might be able to work on the maths better than me. If it had, at 2014, it had at least 20,000 public servant or 30,000 public servant. So to presently now, how much would I retire? We look at 10,000 because you see the amount of contract Rowley put and how much people gone home of age and not filling a vacancy. So the point I get is that if we have about 15 to 18,000 permanent public servants, right? Mm-hmm. That will be in the Ministry of Health and across the board.
Across the various ministries, yes, of government, yes. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to divide 3 billion, leave out the 900 million, right? Mm-hmm. I want to divide 3 billion into 18,000. But to make it easy, divide 18,000 into 1 billion, right? Mm-hmm. And let me see what we get, right? So we will get something like 1.8 million, right? Mm-hmm. Or something around there, yeah, 1.8 million.
I'm accepting what you said. I've not done any calculations, but so.
No.
But I know you would have done your homework.
I just drawing a kind of little reference. No, yeah, I just drawing a little kind of reference, roughly to just keep the conversation going.
Yes.
These are not accurate figures.
Okay.
Right? This is just ballpark and just using a kind of assumption.
Yeah, I understand. Yes.
Keep the, right?
Yeah, to make your point. Yeah.
So that if it's 1.8 million, right? Mm-hmm. A Clark 1 to Clark 3. Then you have IOU and OAI and all of them going up the road, and then you reach to Permanent Secretary, right? Mm-hmm. So what is, if is, when they do the calculation in that market for that period of time, how much money a average Joe getting? Eh? How much? So if for the period of time, right, no, 10% at the public servant salary at $4,000 then, right? 4,005, 4,007, right? So if you divide that, that is $4,700, right? Coming up the road for every added on, right? Because it's 5 by 5 by 5, coming up the road, right?
Okay.
So when you reach the figure, after tax, right? So a realistic figure, who going over 300, who going over 400, that will be at the higher level, right? If, and they have to tax it, you think that if the public servant take interest bearing bonds at 2%, right? And they deposit it back into the central bank, right? Because they will get interest and they can take loan on it, right? No, across the board, it have no banking institution beside the merchant, the what do you call it, the new bank and them open on the corners and them in Port of Spain, right?
Okay, answer and
They
all of
give
them.
it, yeah, we don't want to call it because there's still that they distribute. The public bank give you no interest. First citizen give you no interest, no fixed deposit interest. The credit union and them give you no set of working interest to invest your money. Unit trust giving interest and they have different plan. So if you take shares in the unit trust and open account, that only after 3 years you can access your full amount of money. Eh? But you take and you get a piece of land for 99 years, and you get it nice because if you take cash, you pay tax. But if you get a land, and you flip that land because you can transfer it, and you sell a land later on, NTW asset?
Of course, because land will always increase in value over time. Go ahead.
Right. And at least the African diaspora have an opportunity to genuinely have a piece of deed to own piece of Trinidad and Tobago. Eh? But you see, Penny and them pushing a narrative that this $3.9 billion, when they get it in cash, it should be pushed into other bank who will raise interest rate and you mind me. So as the money start to pay, the same name and them you call, you see they put on that interest bearing account, come invest with them, and as they get a certain amount for what, they tell you for 5 years or 3 years minimum, keep your money there, you can't touch it, right? Keep it there for that. And then after they drop the interest rate on you, and they tell you no interest again. That has happened with a bank called Fitco, you know, with Republic Bank, when the hostile takeover with Gisun and them, and Scotia, Nova Scotia, right? All of a sudden, interest rate and fixed deposit, they're calling you and they're giving you a good monthly installment. So now they're looking for cash. Who really want the cash to go away? Which bank are going to put your cash in to get a future living wage out of it? So all the people think about it. And I just ask the public servants and them, be wise, because money does come and they will always have something to buy and spend on. But when you take your money and you invest it and you tie it into a savings that you can get whatever interest or collateral like land, which does not depreciate, you will be making better. It will be better to take a soft mortgage and reinvest something if you own a car and you keep your land. And you pay off your loan. Easy with your working salary. Right? So I say I want to ask the public servant and them who talking about cash. Once again, is only to call for it for betterment. Or some need houses, some need land. learn no, because after 70 years at the PNM, because so most of you all had supported the PNM. The PNM never see it fit, right? Because it's NHA house all get the same way and rented, right? Now all have an opportunity to
Caller, just hold on.
to pass on.
Mr. Faizabad completing
So-
his presentation. Go ahead, Mr. Faizabad.
So, Uncle Lennox, yeah, so tomorrow, please God, we'll continue this discourse by
All right.
educating the workers and them.
Yes.
So how to invest. Have
Yeah,
a
how to
pleasant good
invest.
night.
Thank you very much, of course. Very word for the wise, indeed. But of course, we will look at certain aspects of what he said. I think is very important, especially for the public servants to use the windfall that they will be getting from the back pay and the increase in salaries wisely for your own development and indeed, of course, the wider development of the country. But let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome. Good night.
Lennox.
Yes.
I was hoping I could talk to you a little bit
Oh gosh,
about
listen,
Venezuela
I would love,
be possible.
I would love if you call back and we will take you on the system itself rather than have you on the handset, so to speak. So call back now and let's get you there because
Can we call back now?
yeah, call
Okay,
back now
all right.
because your contribution is too vital for us to miss any. Remember, of course, it's always WhatsApp. WhatsApp to call when you want to get us. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, of course, for responding cooperatively. Pleasant good night to you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Lennox. Lennox, I saw Parliament today and I was happy. I was pleased with the presentation that the UNC raised and they addressed a lot of issues that I think will impact the communities, especially with the fireworks issue and all of that, you know?
Okay.
But I was thinking more about like, we really need to make this place economically viable so that people don't run away from Trinidad to other countries and then never come back, never
Yes.
look back. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
feel like,
no, I agree, yes. A
Yeah.
sense of patriotism, a sense of what they call jingoism, ultra-nationalism. But go ahead, yes.
yeah, but what I was thinking more is that, you know, it should be an honor to live in this country. People who visit Trinidad should be honored to come here to visit our beautiful island. And I say this because when you're honored, when you love a country and you're honored to be part of that community, you take pride in it. You will make sure that there's good upkeep. You make sure that, you know, our community is safe, that neighbors know each other, that everybody's participating in zoning regulations. Everybody pays their taxes, their house taxes or whatever. If you get rental property, well, you know, you should pay your taxes on that because that money goes back into the community. Ideally, that's how it should work. So I think when I say honor, I feel like it's also, you say nationalism, but it's also building a nation. And so I say that because I look at what's going on in Venezuela and with Russia, not Russia, with Venezuela and China. And I think we could benefit tremendously from what's going on there. You see, Venezuela owed China billions of dollars. And China gave them that money in the form of it should be used for infrastructure. China already owns 11 wells in Venezuela. They already owned it. They went there and they built it. And China has some very powerful trade agreements with oil from Venezuela. But with the United States here, cutting off the airspace of Venezuela, surrounding Venezuela, and now the United States controls the Panama Canal, right? That trade relationship with China is getting really rocky. And I say that because China is a country that's very diplomatic. When they want something, they will negotiate, and then they will just go forward. You know, they don't cower. And I feel like what's going to happen now in the next few months is that we're going to see a price increase because of the expenses that's going to happen in maritime. And isn't that funny how that guy got kidnapped? That it was a maritime thing and they're asking $2 million. But the waters are going to be important because China will need ports and China will not come to Trinidad because the government has already said they support the United States. But Kamala said, the Prime Minister did say that she would stand with the people of Venezuela, and she also stands with China. So I think what MP Munilal should be doing is saying, hey, you know, United States, we stand with you, but we need an investor for Petrotran, for that oil refinery. And if we have China invest in it, because China already has a stake in Atlantic, in the Atlantic, is that LNG, the Atlantic?
LNG, yes.
Yeah,
LNG, yes.
yeah. I
Plants,
think
yes.
China has like a 10% stake or something like that.
Yes.
I believe that we could get the funding to get this refinery up to the technological standards that China is very known for, and sharing that technology here, and then letting the Dragon gas deal go through, and then the United States will benefit. If they want to buy oil too from Venezuela, we could refine it here and send it to the United States. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Jamaica doesn't have any oil, but they are doing it in recent times and boasting two of all places, Trinidad. The reverse was the
Right.
case
That we would,
not so
and
long
it's
ago.
because of, yeah, and it's because we had, and I say, when I say honor living here and building a nation, it's because of so many decades of very rich people controlling politicians, controlling trade negotiations, and very rich bankers. And actually, banking, insurance is going to go up there with this whole thing with China and Venezuela and the United States, because the water risk and, you know, war risk or whatever you call it. But all these years, you know, that we've had these rich people and they've become so bloated that they are monopolies now. And look at the conditions our people live in. You know, I walk in my restaurant, I see garbage everywhere. And people who don't take care of their property. And it's like, you know, potholes everywhere, you know, patches all over the road. It's just, it just make you feel like you should be honored to live in a community. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not denigrating anybody. I'm not just saying you just have to drive through Laventille and you'll see the same thing. Beetham, you'll see the same thing. And it's because people are not honored to be here. That's what it is. But what I'm getting at is if we got opportunities here, we could improve our education system, and we could get more jobs created if that Petrotrin refinery could open up. And then, you know, we could really change this country. But you see, how you change all that years of neglect and from political rule, it's going to take time. If Kamala really wants to win another election, or the UNC wants to win another election, you know, you don't go to social media and propagate propaganda. You work in the education system and you start teaching children about social values and cultural values and country values. And then
Yes.
we build honor system, we build trust, we have good roads, we have good drivers, everybody has insurance. You know what I mean? And you take pride in following the law. But it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like the opportunities are here, but people not jumping at it, you know?
But let me ask
I
you
feel
something.
like this is an opportunity.
From
Go ahead.
your perspective, and I'm asking you, to, of course, not that you have a crystal ball, but to project into the future. Are you seeing the development pattern or the developmental projection of the present government in line or in parallel with what you are suggesting, or you are seeing some other?
I do. I see
Okay.
some of it. Yeah, I do. But I do believe that she needs to still clean up the party. There's some people in that party who's
Okay.
got old baggage, and they're going to pull the party down. But there was a young guy who spoke in Parliament like a few weeks ago, a week ago. He gave his maiden speech, and he was on point on every issue that the opposition raised and criticized the UNC for. In fact, he quoted the former prime minister when the prime minister was speaking about trade in the energy sector. He quoted the prime minister's presentation and gave facts. And when you hear somebody speak like that, you don't need
Just hold on.
you know, it just,
So if-
when they speak like that, you understand what they're saying.
just hold on. You'll
But
I'll
let me,
give you a call back.
I should let you go, right? Because
Yeah,
I
all
have
right, all
another
right.
call
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
in.
you have another call coming in. All right.
But it was good
So
talking
yeah, what
with
Mr.
you.
Faisal call back now. So she's winding up now.
Well,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
I'll
why
wind
not?
up.
Okay.
All I'd like to say is I would like to see some talk between our Minister of Energy and with China and with also Venezuela and with the United States, because we need to get investors in the oil refinery. But we can get China here. We don't need approval from the United States, you know? So
I hear you.
we have a right to do our own infrastructure. And I think that's where the talk should be going now. Don't run to India. Don't run to somewhere in Europe. And let's look at China, because China has a big state in the entire South America. And you
Okay.
can't kick them out. They're a superpower. Okay, I'll let you go now, Leonard. Thank you
Yes,
for giving
thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Um,
of course, for that perspective. But of course, it was intertwined with all of that. Of course, is the whole question of geopolitical, what I consider to be variables, and it is about whether you consider yourself a superpower or not. The fact is that there are interests that people will want to defend, promote, and in and at times fight for. And that is what we are seeing, of course, across the globe at this time. But we will be able to talk a little more about those issues and get into much more finer details. But let's go to the line. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
A pleasant good night to you, Uncle Lennox, and to all your listeners.
Yes, man.
Uncle Lennox, you see, I doesn't like to call and correct people who have their own private agenda, right? Because here what's going on. That same little lawyer going on and stand here, growing legislation and have to talk in the community. That last scholar, no down in Madras, how coolie people, they see trouble, and ethnic discrimination and geographic discrimination. And that young man talked very good, because you know why? You see them so, who they talk, yet China is a trading bloc, and we will move. That apparently, they, for corrupt business, for corrupt prime ministers and head of state, they do trade with China, because I will let that caller know that Jindal and them, right? See what they're facing in America, but when they're using the United States dollar, right? Your answer to United States. And if United States is cleaning up the mess of the underworld cartel and economy, it takes an army like that with magnitude, firepower to go in to deal with the cartel. But here what's going on. China, and then they form BRICS so they could trade with their own currency, right? But how much China does lend? Right now with Panama, right? See the spin-off on it. Panamanians see more trouble and are losing GDP with ship passing through the canal because they only lease it on a loan for China. So when you're talking about economics, you must understand that economics is not that you're trading with who is best for you. Because Raleigh went Ghana and Nigeria. Right now, Nigeria putting back up one of the world's largest refinery and the world center oil and gas. But here what's going on is when like government like Raleigh just leave government and they had a you know the kind of facilities at Petrotrade refinery, we could take pitch from the pitch lake and turn it into fuel. That is the kind of capacity and we cut cracker and we cut the catalyst in Pointe-à-Pierre. Guyana find oil, 1 million barrels a day, the first exploratory well. We supposed to be lining with Guyana and asking them as a partner CARICOM to bring the oil to Trinidad. But you tell me how a deal, you could go and Shell have a license, Shell have a license for 30 years, and Shell leave this country in Trinidad Point 14, and then pay the people their severance pay. And them come now to negotiate to get the license. Them have the license, not Trinidad and Tobago. So what economic prosperity? And when you do with China, you at least currently workers get to the land. When China take over, when Rowley and them was giving away the port, and selling out all the assets, how it is the Chinese is under Rowley, right? And the Dragon gas takes so long to negotiate. Eh? Venezuela owing, Venezuela take a payment like what Rowley do. And that's why they're fighting for the Dragon gas with Repsol. Right? So here what's going on. The Chinese, we have a steel mill. Why the Chinese they take it and the Chinese was steel and the billion and mega project consuming millions of tons of steel. Why do they take we steel mill and we have a gas here? Eh? So it is nice. So you show yourself that the trading bloc we're supposed to do, you align yourself with Penelope Beckers and them because they want Maduro to stay in government, a man who rallied pattern to run this country just the last 10 years. And thank God the supporters of the PNM wake up and vote them out. Eh? Because Maduro win the election, how he win it? Talk about that. Talk about Maduro and the Americans is the big brother of the world, keeping law and order right around the world and the Middle East. Eh? Yes, when you spend $3 billion, you must recover it some way. And America is an economy that uses fuel. And yet still, America have a shale gas and oil, right? So they don't have to fight for if the rest of the world switch off the supply. Eh? But you see, when they talk about fair trade, check back in history, sweetheart, and see why it is Toyota and Nissan, and they're selling more into America, and a Lincoln and a Ford can't sell in America because of businessmen doing trade under the word of trade. They buy a company in China, and the Chinese people buy a piece in America so they can move their money outwards. And that's what they're cleaning up. And that's what they call trading. But when the Chinese came to Trinidad under Manning, right? See what they leave with. They leave with in a debt after our oil price at $125 a barrel US. See what Malcolm Jones and them leave with after the Chinese leave with the investment and what they pay for it. Have a nice day, Uncle Lennox.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very elaborate indeed. But of course, just one takeaway. The argument is that whether or not one should depend or have China be part and parcel of that basket of external investors, government to government, and or through the various agencies that they would have developed. Of course, once you're talking about China, you're talking about government to government because those agencies are owned by the government. There's no private sector in any real context in China. But I think one of the things that we may not have or is required to be dealt with is not just the Belt and Road initiative invented by the Chinese, but also to see the practical manifestation of what is now called debt diplomacy, DEBT, debt owing diplomacy, as opposed, of course, to death, DEATH. But that could cause you DEATH as well, because your country could really be succumb to the rigors of the kind of debt diplomacy by way of investment by the Chinese. And the way they do it, they will take the asset that would have been the consequence of the investment that was supposed to benefit the people and the government. But the arrangement usually is, as we have seen, of course, in places like Pakistan and, of course, Sri Lanka and other places where they take over the ports and so on because the governments of these countries simply could not repay the loans. And instead of course, defaulting and creating all kinds of challenges, because remember, China is not directly linked to the system of multinational, multilateral lending agencies such as the IMF and the World Bank. I remember very distinctly here in Trinidad when there was a loan just after or during COVID or at the twilight of COVID, when there was a case that the then government under Imsbert indicating that he would prefer to take a loan from China rather than the IMF. And whilst the IMF rate of interest was much less, I think it was about 2%, they preferred to go for an interest rate given by the Chinese of about 4%, twice the amount, or 100% more. And the argument then was that the conditionalities of the IMF is too rigorous and is almost absurd. It's too onerous, to use the appropriate word. But certainly that of the Chinese is much more relaxing. But at the end of it all, the sting in the tail is that the government can use the loan from what Imsbert would have told us, and anybody applying common sense to the argument will show that, one, they could abuse the loan and no questions asked. They could misappropriate it, no question asked. They will engage, of course, in clandestine negotiations, meaning that, of course, and that gave rise to the multiple and manifold and many non-disclosure clauses. Remember that? All of that. And, of course, put Trinidad and Tobago at risk, and therefore betraying a fundamental principle, as we have seen throughout the 2015 to the 28th of April this year of the PNM, claiming to act in our best interests. And therefore I cannot see how alone you're getting a rate of interest of 2% from the IMF, but you take the risk and our money and our resources and take a loan instead with a 4% or 100% more interest from China. That to me is asinine. But I want to say this, there's more than that. It is the avoidance of transparency and accountability really is what was at stake here. And Imsbert, of course, in their usual convoluted, but of course spitting in the sky and falling in the face, giving you and us, of course, what I consider be square peg and round hole arguments, and always developing defeatist proposition, that anybody with a modicum of common sense, that whether you're in fifth standard in primary school or whether you have entered the secondary system, could see through. It is so transparent in terms of the foolish and nincompoopish argument. Because if you take a loan with the IMF, yes, you have constraints. You must do what the arrangement says. They want to take a loan so that they could tell us when they interfered with the Heritage and Civilization Fund, they will come to the Parliament and tell us exactly how much they're taking out and for what. And when they get the approval of the Parliament, including, of course, the opposition, because the opposition naturally will not want to deprive the country of any benefit, so therefore, especially arising from taking money from the IMF, because it became a necessity, in spite of the profligacy that may have given rise to the eventual attacking of that particular fund, talking about, of course, the Heritage and Civilization Fund. And when, of course, they would have gotten it, as we have seen under the PNM, and the question is asked in Parliament, the pertinent question is asked in the Parliament by the opposition then, well, what you doing with the money? What's the money is for? Glibly and almost the high degree of cynical snaring. Imsbert will say, well, we take it to do development for Trinidad and Tobago. And where the money go? Because you said that you have it for a specific reason. That is why we agreed, according to the opposition then, we agreed that it would be done for X, Y. Say no. We put it in the consolidated fund. And the consolidated fund is that fund where everything else or anything else, or everything, who could be funded by that particular fund called the Consolidated Fund. So we know that is trickery and chicanery, and therefore it is that which I believe Mr. Faizabad is focusing upon, as opposed to that of Ms. Madras. Both of them having, of course, the interests of Trinidad and Tobago at heart, because Ms. Madras is saying, well, listen, if these people are prepared to bring the technology and maybe share it as well, they have the know-how, and of course they can expeditiously execute the development agenda of the government, then why not? But of course, on the other side of it, as Mr. Faizabad has have identified, the Belt and Road Initiative, and of course the debt trap, the debt diplomacy that China has been engaged in across the globe. And then of course you have to find ways and means to avoid the debt trap, and at the same time engage the capital that is required in order for diversification of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm getting to Trinidad in particular. Diversification agenda that is necessary in order, of course, to wean ourselves, and I'm using that word very loosely, but wean ourselves off, of course, our carbon deposits and so on, that, of course, sometime in the future generations will know what is oil, will know what is gas, because the climate situation and, of course, the so-called green gas or greenhouse effect, the greenhouse effect will be such that it will be difficult for people to breed, for people to, of course, have a settled place to reside on land, on earth, because you have all kinds of climate change scenarios, phenomenons. So future generations will have to treat with that. But I say that the present generations must act now, and thus, of course, the agenda for diversification away from, of course, fossil fuel and the more environmentally friendly energy sources, such as, of course, wind, such as water. Yes, you have hydro, electricity, sun, solar, and so on and so forth, are areas that we must, because we have to find ways and means to keep cool, to keep warm, and to fire up the mechanisms of industry, so as to produce things for human consumption and a better quality of life on earth. Whether that is possible or not with the damage to the environment in the process is another story. All right, so that's another debate that we can look at. Let me just take a look at the time so that the line is open. I know that it's a very high level discussion tonight, but I know that people, everybody can participate, because I think it is not as high as to be impossible to extrapolate, inculcate, appreciate, and to, of course, rationalize. All right? So, of course, it is 9:30, so unfortunately, if no call by the time I'm winding up, I will, of course, make my departure, because we have consumed the first 1.5 hours tonight at least. I think I started on time. Have I? Well, if I didn't, I'm sure we'll have a few extra moments. But let me get back, of course, to what I wanted to share with you in terms of the greatest deception, in my view, perpetrated by Rowley, the PNM, and of course Stuart Young and all of the other elements. And of course, I was at the point when the call started to look at somebody like Hines, who of course I consider to be an absentee Lavantillian, as we are seeing today, when of course he gets the opportunity given by the same Lavantillians. He then loves Lavantil too bad. He cussing for Lavantil. He's saying that there should nothing be said untoward about Lavantil. And he sees, of course, a vision for Lavantil doing better. The irony is this. placed in the situation that he would have gotten multiple opportunities to generate the kind of transformation, the kind of paradigm shift. And even now, having been fired from his work in more ways than one, Rowley would not have gotten rid of him, but we could say that effectively he had fired himself because of the narcoleptic nature of the man and his indolence and his, of course, ignorance and his what I consider to be aggressive, self-serving posture right through his political life. It has come to an end, effectively. But the fact is that he has demonstrated throughout his political career as a absentee Lavantillian. Only like Lavantil and will talk nice things about Lavantil when he is in office. You're not hearing him, but all kinds of things are happening in Lavantil in terms of negativity. He's not putting in a presence. No. So he goes off, of course, with his largesse, just as Rowley, and prefer to remain silent. Of course, Rowley is making a comeback because he believed that blue lights and silver bracelets is inevitable. All of that talking. Blue lights and silver bracelets. So he looking to try to be some kind of victim, as he victim bashed those young ladies who went to him as Prime Minister and said, Mr. Prime Minister, the men of them are beating us up, they are mutilating us, so we want some help. And then he turns and says, well, I ain't telling you what man to take and I'm not in your bedroom. That's the kind of Prime Minister, the kind of individual that we have. A sense of empathy and sympathy. Sense of that. But the point I was making, apart from, of course, dismissing Hines, calling me, of course, one that utilizing my offices, the various offices I would have had, and my commitment to the area as what? As self-serving, that are looking to get rich. I wish. But it would have been impossible to get rich. Nobody with a modicum of common sense. Nobody with a morsel. Not even if you are idiotic, will draw that conclusion. Associating, of course, voluntary self-sacrifice in a community like Laverdale and expect to be rich. Come on. So let's dismiss Hines for the time being. But let me get to before I close, let me get to what I consider to be the supreme, the superlative, the ultimate deception committed by Rowley. We're going to talk about Innsbruck in later, but I want to end with this one. The greatest deception, in my view, quite apart from, of course, telling us that the situation with Malcolm Jones, that which, of course, with the Vincent Nelson and the setting up of Anand Ramlogan and Ramdeen. Quite apart from, of course, telling us that he's in love with Tobagonians and did not send back the Galicia because he loved Tobagonians only to give them rafts and tugs to pull the goods closer to the water and subjected, of course, to the elements of the salt that would be in the atmosphere as the boats or the tugs pull their cargo towards Tobago, only, of course, to find it all rusted and unusable, particularly steel and so on. Remember that? But he loved Tobago too bad. You understand why Tobago has reciprocated in kind, in that kind of love? Well, they are reciprocating that now. The point I am making is all of the deceptions. I ain't talk yet about, of course, the Galleon Passage. I ain't talk about the Cabo Star and the other passenger vessel that never came. But of course, we were paying more than what we, according to Rowley, that we ought to have paid, and he did nothing about it. The greatest one, in my view, may have slipped to most people, so let me say it, is that setup, that projection, that association with him getting an honorary degree from the institution or the university that Biden also attended. And his friend, who he gave from Diego Martin, being on the verge of resigning. And as a final stint, orchestrated an honorary degree for both Rowley and Biden in New York, of course. And that was to give Rowley an opportunity to meet Biden one-on-one. Obviously, they would have had discussion that they're both being honored by Biden's alma mater. And the comment of Biden tells you clearly how surprised he was that Rowley was there receiving an honorary degree from that university, orchestrated by his friend who had some sway and influence in the university. Yeah. And why am I saying that? Because up to that point in time, Rowley was persona non grata in the United States. He had a overstay when he went to California, remember that? In one of those international conferences. And he is yet to tell us why he had that overstay, but there was speculation awry in Trinidad, one of which, of course, he had no choice but to bellow in his usual, what I consider to be aggressive and irascible manner. Yeah. You see, it wasn't long for them to say that I was detained in the United States. Remember that? Conscience prick him. But the fact is, that all that time he was persona non grata. But when, of course, his friend, who he gave, of course, Trinidad and Tobago's highest award, the Order of Trinidad and Tobago, and being, of course, an influential element in that university, was able by that roundabout, circumlocutive way, was able to bring Biden and Rowley together. And you notice after that, he was able to go back to the United States and, of course, talk with congressmen, etc., because the Democrats would have opened up consequential of Biden's instructions or association based on that setup that was orchestrated. It's the greatest. It's the greatest. And that is just the ultimate in the phantasmagorical stories and concoctions that we have seen displayed by Rowley, by Stuart Young, by Imsbert, by Gonzalez, by Dolly, by Regis, by Penelope Beckles. Yeah. And of course, we can't leave out Cummins, who don't know if he's coming or he's going. Can't leave them out. Can't leave them out at all. And there are so many others that you can, of course, identify as being part and parcel of that charade, that facade, that deception, that histrionic and theatrics that they were engaged in for just about 10 years. And the country had reached the zenith of its tolerance of that kind of nonsense. Over 100,000 of their expected sympathizers just simply moved away and gravitated, of course, to the UNC and the coalition of vision. Thus, of course, getting both not just a handsome, massive endorsement, massive mandate. Yes, 26 seats in Trinidad. I was projecting all 39 in Trinidad. They're lucky, just as in Tobago, when we predicted all 15 for the then PDP. And now, of course, we again are predicting from Trinidad the next THA elections, 2026, on the 12th of January, we expect that the Farley led party, the TPP, Tobago People's Party, will get all 15. They're lucky they got one. Are they lucky in Trinidad to got the 12 plus 1? Because the party itself is such a, what I consider to be a mortar filled with corruption, nepotism, cronyism, and con men and con women. Yes. They are maelstrom of evil, poor policy, priority, and clearly misappropriation of not just financial resources, but policies and programs that they say would have benefited Trinidad and Tobago, but turned out, and with a high degree of specificity, lining their respective pockets with state resources. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. See you tomorrow morning on the Ground Report, Andy, Mikey, and myself, as we continue with these and other stories. And as we return tomorrow night on the corridor transformation. Don't forget, we have some more internal issues. We have, of course, the football team. We have readjusted the logo, for example. Tomorrow, of course, we will be finalizing the registration, $2,500. I want to thank those who have come together to do that. As I started, I can't give as I would have liked to, and was the case. A little 200 here, a little 100 here to stop a fella from going and lock or steal somebody's, or rob somebody's, or pull somebody's chain, as the case may be. But whatever we can do, we must do. People would say that I'm stupid. People would say that I'm wasting my time. Well, I am of the philosophy, as we started, of course, MLIO, that at one time had over 300 students of the type that all of us are concerned about today. All of us concerned about. And I always made the point that if we could save one, we would have done the work of the master. One. But of course, we know that is an exaggeration, because you're going to save more than one, because your effort is genuine, your effort is focused, your effort is to see beyond the yampi or the myopia that others have failed to either see or prepared to make the sacrifice and the commitment. But I expect at the same time there will be those who, like Heinz, will be soothsayers and criticizers, because they can't believe that a human being will commit themselves to a community such as Laventille, knowing the level of trauma, the level of stigmatization, the level of national concern, not for positive, but for negative. And we have seen, of course, the phenomenon where one guy having gotten, of course, the opportunity because he's from Beetham. I talk about Marcel, yes. Got a little, what I consider the helping hand in more ways than one. And when he gets there, instead of genuinely offering assistance like this discussion tonight and the facilitation on the social media platform at a cost, You have to pay electricity, you have to pay internet, you have to pay, of course, for the equipment and so on. Right in this room here, we are talking about nearly $100,000 in equipment. And I want to thank tonight those who have stayed the course. A very good friend, he has turned out to be in more ways than one. I went to him tonight and collected something from him. I will only say that my son, one friend. A pleasant good night to you, sir. Really appreciate all of the assistance that you would have been given, that we have been given, sorry. And it's a small price to pay to talk to the authorities, with respect, of course, to your concern as far as noise pollution and matters of that nature is concerned. It is a privilege to be an advocate for that on your behalf. And so too, for those others who may wish to assist us, feel free, open door. And where I can, and I've been helping quite a lot of persons, we will have a program on that alone since the 28th of April. It's over 1,000 persons registered here, you know, for work, for social assistance, for writing a letter, for advocating to a minister, for giving somebody the minister's telephone number to call when all else fails, all of that. And if I did not stay here, and if we didn't have a facility like this, or a person like this, then the situation could have only negatively be exacerbated, get worse. So thank all and sundry. Yes, don't forget, of course, you could call me anytime, 337-6940, and of course you can call Annie at the other number, 336-6594. Yes? And of course, we will be only too glad to meet with you, to collect at your convenience. Those kids really need you. And we really appreciate all who have already committed themselves and who are now committing themselves. Today, for example, flour mill, they run out of flour, so we have to go back, of course, to get some flour there. But they did send to say that they are prepared to make a contribution again. So we look forward to that. I understand there's a shortage of rice. So we have a lot of flour, but very little rice. We are hoping that they will at least give us some in their stock. So I would like you, of course, to do the same wherever you are across the globe. Just call us and we will, of course, oblige. Of course, as I said, the football team is up and going. We will have a highlight of that, and we will, of course, put it in a nice video package for you to show you the level and quality, and therefore built in what we envision for the area, because quality manifests itself in many ways. But I know that when I was at in my entrepreneurial course program, and of course as one that has some education, let's say, in business management, I can tell you that quality, they say simply, is just the satisfaction of the customer. That is quality. But I want to tell you it is much more than that. It is sometimes have to do with the aesthetics, how it looks physically, how something smells. Yes, the articulation. But usually is more visual, and of course utilizing the air, so how something sounds as well. All right? And so those are the two main senses that you use to determine quality. Yes, indeed, the ears and the eyes. But of course, in the case of professions such as culinary, artistic, delivery, but of course you have to learn to smell and you have to taste as well. So something could be smelling nice but tasting bad. So All of these are part and parcel of the process. But let me just get out of here. So a pleasant good night once again. All the best to you for the rest of the night. Don't forget, of course, tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy, Mike, and myself. And, of course, we'll be back here tomorrow night from 8 o'clock, preferably. And let's go to Guyana. I love this tune too bad. I think our Guyanese counterparts in terms of soca did justice to this tune, and we can of course superimpose Trinidad and Tobago circumstance just as that of Guyana, because we have an ethnic composition that a major part of which is of course the Indian community.
Christmas morning, liming with my friends and family.
Yes, indeed.
Greeting everyone around, eating, dancing, getting down, spending week Christmas in Guyana. Watching all the little children running up and down, playing excitedly with their toys. Making sure we get we share of curry, goat and rum. Chocolate cards and dominoes with the boys. Yes, man. There's nothing like me home on Christmas morning. Everybody there soca dancing. Masquerade band coming down. Mother Sally prancing round. Spending week Christmas in Guyana. Merry Christmas. Ginger beer jumping, winding up the booms in and out. Sneaking in the kitchen to see what grandma cooking. Putting something hot inside me mouth. Ow! There's nothing like me home on Christmas morning. Garlic pork and black fruit cake baking. Plenty sorrel and mobby, ice apple and enough sweet tea. Spending week Christmas in Guyana. Ho ho ho! Christmas. Hey, Captain Paul, how black eye boy? Hey, sure. Merry Christmas, boy. Ho, ho, ho. Christmas come, Marco and them boys are wrong, drinking rum and telling old time story. Neville Budan is the man, Christmas he does kill two rum. We eating long roti with chip curry, not pepper. Nothing like me home on Christmas morning. Good friends already gathering. Eating lava meat well done, drinking wine and XM rum. Spending week Christmas in Guyana. Welcome boys, cheers!